Hey guys, welcome to week 7. Our topic this week is on paraprofessionals or paraeducators and how to best support them and work with them in the classroom. So this week you need to make sure that you watch this video, which you're already doing. You also need to interact on Padlet, and so pick an article that you have read, and then you need to post one response to one of the questions on there, and then continue to post at least 2 more follow-ups with interacting with your peers so that we can keep the conversation going. And then you are more than welcome to look at our tool this week, which is a Weebly website where you can interact and find some good resources for yourself. And then there is a summary of all the other articles on that Google Doc. So enjoy the week.
Hi everyone, my article this week was a systematic approach for supporting paraeducators in educational settings. This article I thought was a really quick and easy read, and it broke it down into kind of 3 overall strategies that you can use when working with your paraprofessionals to ensure that they are successful and that you have the best environment for your classroom. It did start out by explaining that paraprofessional management is probably the trickiest thing that teachers have to deal with because we don't receive a lot of training on it. So they decided to break it down into 3 basic systematic approaches. The first one being supervising. So basically, I'm going to just give like the brief version of this, but the Google Doc has a little bit more length to it. But basically, come up with a shared goal, which would help to motivate them, and you can kind of always tie back your feedback to like how are we doing reaching the goal that we set forth as a team. Communicating effectively, be very explicit, model everything that you can, and then I thought this was important, check for professional understanding. So I think a lot of times even I, just kind of do the smile and nod even if I don't understand something because we're afraid to look silly. And so just asking some like clarifying questions, allow them to ask questions and make it like a comforting environment to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And then schedule meetings with staff. The author suggested 30 to 40 minutes a week. That's hefty in my world. The paraprofessionals in my school are only here 15 minutes and 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after our school day. So like finding time to squeeze in a meeting that long would be hard. But I think the weekly meeting is important. So I'm going to try and aim for like 10 to 15 minutes next year. And then use of formal and informal assessments to help monitor their progress and check for understanding. And then the next strategy is in-service, so kind of providing your own little trainings for them, reviewing teaching strategies for them. The article mentioned actually like writing out your lesson plans so that the paraprofessionals have like a reference guide that they can use, and then let them watch you explicitly model whatever the strategy may be. Give feedback after you have then watched them also act out or perform the new strategy. And then also, while you're watching them do these new strategies, make sure you are following up with a lot of positive praise. And then the last strategy they talked about was problem solving. So if you reach a point where something is just not working in your paraprofessional relationship, they are not necessarily implementing a strategy effectively, make sure you have enough data that you can go into a conversation, but then have a conversation with the paraprofessional first. Give them time to ask questions, to clarify things for them, allow them time to reteach right then and there for you, so you can do it in more of a safe setting. Reteach and model as needed, but it should all be made to be a very safe and welcoming environment.
Hello, I am doing the summary on the article entitled Top 10 List to Teachers What Paraeducators Want You to Know by Catherine G. Riggs. And something that I found interesting about this article was that it was from the viewpoint of paraeducators or paraprofessionals, so it was a first-hand account of what they would like teachers and educators to know when working with paraprofessionals and educators, so I found that very interesting. Riggs started out by saying that Many times teachers are not uncomfortable, or nervous or unsure of how to work with paraprofessionals in the classroom because we rarely, if ever, receive training or professional development on how to work with paraeducators and how to establish that relationship and the expectations and guidelines. So Riggs said at the end of the article that it is important that universities and districts provide professional development and training and education on how to work with paraeducators because with No Child Left Behind and IDEA, inclusive classrooms are becoming the norm, and more teachers nowadays are having to work with a paraeducator or professional, so they need to have that background and knowledge and training in order to make sure that they are utilizing the paraprofessional in the correct way. Paraeducators are bringing a wide variety of experience and knowledge to the classroom. The ones that were interviewed, they came or taught in a variety of classroom settings and worked with a wide age range of children. So they had a lot of different ideas to bring to the table. So when you're working with them, just be mindful of that and ask for advice, ask for opinions, ask questions, see what they know, see what they can bring to the table, because they are they have a lot of information that they are willing and wanting to share with you. So is that we are supervisors of these paraprofessionals, and we are going to have to give them critiques. We are going to have to give them suggestions and things that they need to change. And Riggs pointed out in the article that a lot of teachers are trained or under the belief that they are there to supervise children, not adults. So this is where another um, way that the uncertainty comes in, because they're not used to it. They never expected that they would have to do it. So just be aware that you are going to have to supervise them, and you are the leader in the classroom because it is ultimately your classroom. So just get to know them, make them feel a part of the classroom, make them feel a part of the community, get to know their background, get to know their interests, their hobbies. Include them in the classroom discussions, because they are people. They want to be involved. They're excited to be there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be.
So one strategy, the article with Stockhall talks about the direct instruction training model, which is an excellent way that you can help support paraeducators in your classroom by just working side by side with them to help support them. So the direct instruction training model just breaks it down into different steps. So the first thing that you would do is identify what you needed to help support that paraeducator with. So that would be maybe a skill that they need to teach another student, or a skill that they need to be using to help support that student. So just identifying that goal first, and then looking at explaining that to the paraeducator, why they need to know that, and then providing instruction. And they talk about the kind of the I do, we do, you do approach, where you would model what you want that paraeducator to do, then watch them, let them do it with you, and then they do it, and then you observe them as well. So you'll instruct them, you'll demonstrate it, you'll give them guided practice with it, and then you'll observe them doing that. And then after you do that, the next step would then be to provide feedback. And so their suggestion in that was just to make sure it was immediate, that it's right after what's happening, because they're best able to apply it and interpret it. But when you're giving feedback, you need to kind of always begin with a positive, and then how that applied to their the behavior of the student or the behavior of the paraprofessional, and then comment on the strategy that they used, how it was effective, and then also look at a student's negative behavior, and then maybe pinpoint what happened and how that could be addressed or fixed if that was something that did not go as they were hoping, and then make sure that you give an explanation with your feedback so that they're aware of what it is that they did and how either they need to fix it or what the good things that they did. And then always just end your conference with that positive note. too, to just make sure that that collaboration piece is there and that you have that working relationship. So all of those things were kind of outlined in the direct instruction teaching model to best support paraeducators, in the classroom, so that they are getting the training that they need to help students succeed.
Hello, my article was on questionable utilization of paraprofessionals in inclusive schools. Are we addressing symptoms or causes? So it's a study that presents a ton of data from school personnel and parents who promote fully inclusive classrooms. It explored 3 main areas. The first one was how teachers and paraprofessionals spend their time. The second one was how paraprofessionals feel about some of their practices. And then the last one is perspectives about school-wide practices and inclusive education that might better utilize paraprofessionals in the school. So the results of this were just to address the core issues for paraprofessionals and try to keep talking about how there's not really this core true change for paraprofessionals that they want. So the data revealed a ton of patterns about a variety of things, but the first one was the use of time for paraprofessionals and special educators. Special ed teachers spend significantly less time on instruction than the paras do. In the specific school where they were doing the study, there were 4 times as many paraprofessionals as special ed teachers, which reveals that many students with disabilities receive the majority of their instruction from their paraprofessionals. Individual paraprofessionals spend less time providing instruction than group paraprofessionals do. So if you're a one-on-one versus if you have a group of students. This raised concerns about whether students with one-on-one paras are receiving the competent instruction that they deserve. There was questioning if the personnel's use of time matches their skills and training. So if they really are spending that much time doing instruction for students, are they really trained as well as the special ed teacher is? Data collected from administrators proved to be much different than the other groups, which stands out because the administrators are responsible for allocating the resources, developing frameworks, and providing the training. So they were under the understanding that paraprofessionals were trained well and were, ready to use their skills to teach these students. But the feedback from the paraprofessionals and the teachers were a little bit different. Special education paraprofessionals reported spending about 86% of their day within 3 feet of their assigned student. That's a startling atypical experience in comparison to a typical gen ed student. In a fully inclusive school, that comparison doesn't connect to their main purpose, right? They're not really giving them the same opportunities. Peers aren't going to interact as much if an adult is within 3 feet of them. 64% of paraprofessionals reported that students with disabilities were separated from the rest of the classroom activities. So they're located in a separate area like the back or side of the classroom. Despite that statistic, many general education teachers reported that students with disabilities are physically situated in the classroom that allows for full participation with the classmates. So there's some disconnect there on what the expectation is and what kind of services these students are actually receiving. And honestly, the discrepancy may just lie in a lack or unclear level of communication. So they spend a lot of time towards the end of the article talking about communication and how just figuring it out and making sure you're communicating more clearly would really help level the playing field. So at this point, you've made it through our video. If you're still watching, I'm proud of you. It is hard for teachers to be concise because we want to be very detailed when we come to our responses. But head on over to Padlet, and from there you guys can start answering the questions and work in the group discussion this week.